Hi students, this is Mr. Al. We're going to start a new unit, but at the beginning of the unit, we are going to review something you have learned before, which is called angle relationships. In your notes, you are given some vocabulary on the top of the table. The first column is for you to put them in. The second column, you got some definitions. You have learned these angle relationship vocabulary last year, so I'm going to ask you to take some time right now and match them with the correct definitions to your best ability. And then afterwards, you can continue watching to review or maybe even relearn some of the vocabularies and the definitions, and then see how they would look like in the example on the right side of the table. So let's have a look. A line that intersects two other lines, that is called a transversal. And it's exactly like how you can see on the right side. This is more specific because the two lines, these arrows, it means that the two lines are parallel. And in this case, it's a transversal with a pair of parallel lines. Two lines that are always the same distance apart and they will never intersect, the word is already in here, that is called parallel. Two angles that add up to 180 degrees, and a lot of times they form a straight line, and that is called supplementary angle. And here are some examples on the right side. Angle 1 and angle 3, well, they add up to 180 degrees, or angle 5 and angle 7, you can see they are just straight lines. But of course, there are more. 3 and 4 are supplementary, 1 and 2, 2 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 6 and 8, they're all supplementary because they all form straight lines. Next, corresponding angle, you kind of already have the wording right there, are the ones that are at the same position at each intersection. So there you go, that's called corresponding angles. For example, 1 and 5, 1 and 5. You can kind of see the angles are formed basically in the same way. If you choose to use a hand gesture to represent the angle, one finger would point to the left, the other would point up, and then you kind of slide it around in this whole setup, in this whole transversal. You see when you move to 5, it's the same thing. One pointing to the left, the other pointing up. That means they are corresponding angle. You're just sliding this kind of hand gesture around without turning or rotating your hand. And that means they are corresponding angles. 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 4 and 8, 3 and 7. These are all examples of corresponding angles. And we have opposite angles when two lines intersect. They are called vertical angles. So opposite angle, they are basically facing each other. Or you can think it as they're only sharing one point. The two lines that form the angles are pointing to complete opposite directions. So for example, 1 and 4. So you can see for 1 is pointing to the left, the other is pointing up right. But for 4, one is pointing down left and the other is pointing to the right. So they are pointing to complete opposite directions. That's why they're called opposite angles. But the only thing that they share is one point. So 1 and 4 are some examples, 2 and 3 are examples of vertical angles, 6 and 7, and 5 and 8. These are vertical angles. Moving on, we still have transversal as a definition. Next, two angles that are in between the parallel lines and on opposite side of the transversal. So parallel lines are these two, and the transversal is the one that is cutting through. So in between the parallel lines, so let's say these are two parallel lines, anything right here, that would mean in between. And in this case, 3 and 6, they are alternate interior angles. Because they're on the interior, so 3 in between 3, 4, 5, 6, these are interior angles. And alternate means on opposite side. So one left, one right. That's why 3 and 6, they kind of form the Z shape. And 4 and 5, they also kind of form an opposite or like not the other way of a Z shape. And we have angles that are outside the parallel lines. So now we're referring to angles that are outside. So these here above or below, that would mean outside the parallel lines. And they're also on the opposite side of the transversal. So one on the left and one on the right. That is called alternate exterior angle. So outside is referring to exterior and the opposite side is just alternate. That's the wording we're using. So 1 and 8 or 2 and 7. They're outside. 1, 2, 7, 8. These are the four angles that are outside the parallel lines. And then we also want them to be on the one on the left, the other on the right side. So all of these so far that you can see, they're the same. So if we go back to the previous one, 1 and 5, well, corresponding angles are the same, vertical angles are the same, and alternate interior angles are the same, and alternate exterior angles are the same. And then we have something else. This one has two different names depending on which book you're looking at. It can be called consecutive interior angles or same side interior angles. In between again, so we're referring to 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the four angles that are in between. But this time we want them to be on the same side of the transversal. They're either both going to be on the left or both going to be on the right. So 3 and 5, as you can tell, they're clearly not the same. So they're actually adding up to 180 degrees. All the other transversal angles, they're mostly the same. The only two that won't be the same is supplementary angle, and then here, same-sided interior angle or consecutive interior angle. I personally prefer this name of same-sided interior angle because the name is kind of including the definition already. So 3 and 5 are same-sided interior, they add up to 180. Or 4 and 6, they're also same-sided interior, they also add up to 180 degrees. These are all the definitions that you have learned before about angle relationship. So let's have a look at some examples. It's asking you to decide on the relationship, and then it's also asking what a question mark is. So example 1, the relationship, you can see they're in between the parallel lines, so we know it has the word interior, and then one is on the left, the other is on the right. They also kind of form this Z shape, so the relationship is alternate interior angles. And alternate interior angles are the same as each other, are congruent, so the question mark is also 84 degrees. Example 2, the relationship. Well, they're both in between the parallel line, but this time instead of one on the left, the other on the right, 100 and question mark, they're both on the left side, so they're actually on the same side. So that could be called same side interior angles or consecutive interior angles. And in this case, they're not the same. They actually add up to 180 degrees. So 100 degree plus the question mark is 180 degrees, which makes the question mark 80 degrees. The rest of the examples are all asking you to identify the question mark and then decide on either the, it's asking you to decide on the relationship with the angles given, and then it's asking for either a question mark or an X. So please pause here and try all the rest of the examples. Hopefully you have tried them. Let's have a look. Example 3. Not in between, so they're actually on the outside of the parallel lines. We know it's going to be exterior, one on the left, the other on the right. So alternate exterior angles, and they are still the same, still congruent, so 98 degrees. Next, one on the outside, one on the inside, so clearly it's not exterior or interior, even though one is on the left, the other is on the right. That's not the relationship then. This actually is not affected by the parallel lines. So let's look more carefully. 117 pointing up, right, and left. And then the question mark is pointing down, left, and right. They also only share 1 point. So they're actually vertical angles. And they are the same, so 117 degrees for the question mark as well. Example 5. One on the left, one on the right, yes. But even though they look like they're alternate, and they're both in between the parallel lines, but it's not one on the top line and one on the bottom line. They're actually on the same line. So we're actually looking at the straight line that they're forming. So it's actually supplementary angles. And supplementary angles are supposed to add up to 180 degrees, which means the question mark is actually going to be 91 degrees. Example 6. You can see they're kind of on the same side, but they're not in between. One is outside, the other is inside, so there's no way it's alternate or same side interior angle. But you look at the position, 61 degree is pointing up, left, and then left. Question mark is also up, left, and then left. So they're actually the same kind of setup, which means they are corresponding angles. So it's congruent, 61 degrees. Next, example 7. One is on the right side, the other is on the left side, alternate, and they're also both on the outside of the parallel lines. So alternate exterior angles. And alternate exterior angles are supposed to be the same, which means 20x is supposed to be the same as the 100, which means x is going to equal 5. That's example 7. Moving on, example 8. Both angles are in between the parallel lines, and one is on the left, the other is on the right. So alternate interior angles. And in that case, we're setting them equal to each other. Add the 2 to the other side, then divide 12 on both sides. X is going to be 6. That is example 8. Moving on, example 9. This time, they're both on the right side and they're both in between the parallel lines. So same side interior angles. I'm going to add them together to 180. So x plus 63 plus 120 equals 180 degrees. Combined like terms get you 183 subtracted over. So x is going to be a -3. And that's everything for this angle relationship review lesson. Thank you.